guys, welcome to Library Land. Let's continue on with Stargirl. When we left her off, Susan, we should call her now, had just given her speech at the oratorical contest and seemed to blow the audience away. So let's see in chapter 29 what are the results of that contest. Chapter 29. She won, as she said she would. The silver plate they gave her twinkled like starburst in a galaxy of flashing cameras. 2 TV crews washed her in lights and interviewed her backstage. Strangers mobbed her, citizens of Phoenix gushed, telling her that they had been coming to the contest for years and never had heard anything like it. Schoolchildren thrust programs into her face for autographs. Every parent wanted her for a daughter, every teacher for a student. She was so happy, so proud. She yelped and cried when she saw us. She hugged each of us in turn, and I thought she would squeeze the breath out of me. Back in the hotel, everyone already seemed to know. The doorman, the desk manager, the people in the lobby and the elevator. Suddenly, she had this magical, wonderful power. Whoever laid eyes on her smiled, and the English language dwindled to a single word repeated over and over: congratulations. She walked, we floated, around the block to burn off our excess energy. Back at the hotel, we were invited to the nightclub, even though Susan and I were underage. We drank ginger ales and ordered jalapeno poppers, and we danced to a country and western band while Susan's face beamed on the late news from the TV above the bar. The dance floor was the only place she did not carry her silver plate. First thing, the next morning, she was there, sliding under the door of my hotel room, her picture on the front page of the Arizona Republic. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it, pride welling in me. I read the story. It called her speech mesmerizing, hypnotic, mysteriously touching. I pictured folding morning papers tossed from cars, landing in driveways all over Mica. We all met for the breakfast buffet. People stared and nodded and smiled and silently lifted congratulations across the restaurant. We headed for home in a 2-car caravan. For a while, Susan was her usual chatty self. She put the silver plate on the front seat beside Mr. McShane. She told him that it would ride with him for the next 10 whole minutes, and he could touch it all he wanted. This was his reward, she said, for telling her about MOAs. As soon as the 10 minutes were up, she took the plate back. As we drew nearer to town, the chatter subsided and finally stopped. We rode the last miles in silence. She took my hand. The nearer we came, the harder she squeezed. When we hit the outskirts of town, she turned to me and said, "Do I look okay?" I told her she looked great. She didn't seem to believe me. She held up the silver plate and studied her reflection. She turned to me again and looked at me for some time before she spoke. "I've been thinking. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to hold the plate myself, okay?" I nodded. Until they lift me on their shoulders. Then I'll give it to you. Understand?" I nodded. "So stay next to me every second. Crowds can separate you, you know. They do that. Okay?" I nodded. Okay. Her hand was hot and sweating. We drove past a man in his driveway. He was dipping a large broom-like brush into a pail and painting the asphalt with black sealer. He was bent intently on his work in the noonday sun, and somehow I knew at that moment what would happen. I could see. I wanted to shout to Mr. McShane, "No, don't turn, don't go in there." But he did turn. He turned, and there was the school in front of us, and never in my life have I seen a place so empty. No banners, no people, no cars. "Probably around back," Mr. McShane said. His voice was hoarse. "Parking lot." We swung around the back to the parking lot, and yes, there was a car, and another car, and people, 3 of them, shading their eyes from the sun, watching us. 2 of them were teachers. The other was a student, Dory Dilson. She stood apart from the teachers, alone in the black shimmering sea of asphalt. As we approached, she held up a sign, a huge cardboard sign, bigger than a basketball backboard. She set the sign on the edge and propped it up, erasing herself. The red painted letters said, "Way to go, Susan. We're proud of you." The car stopped in front of it. All that was left to see of Dory Dilson were 2 sets of fingers holding the sides of the sign. We were close enough now to see that the sign was trembling, and I knew that behind it, Dory was crying. There was no confetti, no kazoos. Nothing cheered, not even a mockingbird. Aw, that's so sad to hear that no one showed up to welcome her home. All right, stay tuned for chapter 30. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Stargirl for Chapter 30. As we idled, stunned and silent in front of Dory Delson's sign, Susan's parents came and retrieved her from Mr. McShane's car. As in all things, they did not seem especially surprised or emotional over what was happening. Susan seemed in a trance. She sat beside me, staring vacantly at the sign through the windshield, her hand no longer holding mine. I groped for words, but could not find them. When her parent came, she allowed herself to be led away. As she got out of the car, the silver plate slid from her lap and rang like a dying bell on the asphalt. Her father picked it up. I thought he would take it, but instead he leaned it into the back seat where I sat, with a strange smile, gave it to me. I did not see her for the rest of the weekend. By Monday, she was Stargirl again. Floor-length skirt, ribbons in her hair, just like that. She went from table to table at lunchtime, passing out happy-faced cookies. She even gave one to Hillary Kimball. Hillary took off her shoe and used it like a hammer to smash the cookie on the table. Stargirl strolled among us, strumming her ukulele, asking for requests. Cinnamon perched on her shoulder. He was strapped into a tiny toy ukulele. She made her voice squeaky and kept her lips from moving, and it was as if Cinnamon were serenading with her. Dory Delson, bless her, stood and applauded. She was the only one. I was too stunned to join her, and too cowardly, and angry, and not wanting to show approval for her return to Stargirl. Most of the students did not even look, did not even seem to listen. And at the bell, as we left the lunchroom, I looked back. The tables were littered with cookies. Walking with her after school that day, I said, "I guess you're giving up, huh?" She looked at me. Giving up? On what? On being popular, on being, how could I say it? She smiled. Normal? I shrugged. Yes, she said firmly. Yes? I'm answering your question. The answer is yes. I'm giving up on trying to be popular and normal. Her face and body language did not seem to match her words. She looked cheery, perky. So did Cinnamon, perched on her shoulder. Don't you think maybe you should back off a little? I said. Don't come on so strong. She smiled at me. She reached out and brushed the tip of my nose with her fingertip. Because we live in a world of them, right? You told me that once. We stared at each other. She kissed me on the cheek and walked away. She turned and said, I know you're not going to ask me to the Octillo ball. It's okay. She gave me her smile of infinite kindness and understanding, the smile I had seen her aim at so many other needy souls, and in that moment I hated her. That very night, he were playing a scripted role, Kevin called me and said, "So who are you taking to the Octillo ball?" I dodged. "Who are you taking?" "Don't know," he said. "I don't know either." There was a pause at the end of the line. "Not Stargirl?" "Not necessarily," I said. "You trying to tell me something?" "What would I want to tell you?" "I thought you were too. I thought there was no question." "So why are you asking?" I said, and hung up. And in bed that night, I became more and more uncomfortable as the moonlight crept up my sheet. I did something I had never done before. I pulled down the shade. In my dreams, the old man on the mall bench raised a wobbly head and croaked, "How dare you forgive me?" Next morning, there was a new item on the plywood roadrunner, a sheet of white paper, and at the top it said, "Sign up here to join new musical group, the Ookie Dukes. No experience necessary." There were 2 numbered columns for names, 40 in all. By the end of the day, all 40 were filled in, with names like Minnie Mouse, Darth Vader, and the Swamp Thing. The principal's name was there too, and Wayne Parr, and Dory Dilson. "Did you see?" said Kevin. "Someone wrote in Parr's name." We were in the studio control room. It was May, and our hot seats were over for the year, but on some days we still gravitated to the studio after school. "I saw," I said. He stepped up to the blank monitor, studied his reflection. "So I didn't see your name on the list." "Nope. You don't want to be an Ook Duke?" "Guess not." We fiddled with the equipment for a while. Kevin walked out onto the stage. He flipped the switch. His mouth moved, but I couldn't hear him. I held the soft pad of the headphones against my ear. His voice seemed to come from another world. "She's turning goofy again, isn't she? Worse than ever." I stared at him through the glass. I put down the headphones and walked out. I understood what he was doing. He had decided that it was now okay to say bad things about Stargirl. Permission to do so must have come from my behavior. Apparently, the first to read me was Stargirl herself. I felt the sting of her remark from about the Octillo ball. Was I that obvious? Classrooms, hallways, courtyards, lunchroom, everywhere I heard her disparaged, mocked, slurred. Her attempt to become popular, to be more like them, had been a total failure. If anything, they detested her more now, and they were more vocal about it around me. Or was I just listening better? She and Dory Dilson, the only Ookie Dukes, um, did a duet in the courtyard one day after school. Stargirl strumming the ukulele, and they both sang Blue Hawaii. Clearly, they had been practicing. They were very good, but they were also very ignored. By the end of the song, they were the only two left in the courtyard. Next day, they were there again. This time, they wore sombreros. They sang Mexican songs. Cielito lindo, vaya con Dios, my darlings. I stayed inside the school. I was afraid to walk past them, as if they weren't there. I was equally afraid to stand and listen. I peeked from a window. Stargirl was doing her best imitation of a flamenco. The click of castanets came through the window pane. Students walked past, most of them not even glancing her way. I saw Wayne Parr and Hillary Kimball go past. Hillary laughed out loud, and Kevin, and the basketball guys. I realized now that the shunning would never end, and I knew what I should do. I should go out there and stand in front of them and applaud. I should show Stargirl and the world that I wasn't like the rest of them, that I appreciated her, that I celebrated her and her insistence on being herself. But I stayed inside. I waited until the last of the students had left the courtyard, and Stargirl and Dory were performing for no one. To my surprise, they went on and on. It was too painful to watch. I left the school by another door.